Shit, man. It feels good to be consistent, let me tell you. You know, I've spent a long time doing research about politics and about the things that I believe in general. And eventually, I got to the point where I was exposed to so many books, so much news information, bar charts, non bar charts, all these types of things, so much information, so much history, and there's so much more that I need to know because obviously, the more that you learn, the more that you learn the things that you don't know. Um, but I believe I've gotten to a point, especially in the last, 6, 7 months, where my economic and social views have basically been entirely solidified. I've flip flopped on a few very, very specific points that I needed to learn more about, but I feel like at this point, the act of doing research and learning about more things always just kind of serves to validate the beliefs that I already hold. Like, it feels like each piece of information that I receive is only reaffirming the things that I already believe. And because I know it's true, in my opinion, based on all of the evidence that I've been exposed to, which, as I said, is a lot, uh, it feels like, I can pick up a book by someone who I completely disagree with, and I can read the entire book without even feeling one bit of anger. Because at that point, you become so sure of what you believe that you're just unable to get mad with the opposing side. And I found myself in this constantly debating with people. I do this a lot. I was actually just now doing this. And like, I'll notice that on the other side, the person will get really triggered. They'll be really mad about the point that they're making and just start shouting all of this really arrogant stuff. And it's fun to just kind of leave, a wall of text explaining all of the facts as you remember them, and then providing far more information than they ever could. And I don't mean in terms of gish galloping, because obviously that's a separate thing, but being able to substantiate and argue your points as well as you can, and being able to just present them instead of being afraid to present them in the first place, because I think that's where a lot of my fear would come in for the longest time, is that I would be so afraid to do a debate with anybody because I didn't know what I was talking about. I had opinions, sure, but you can't properly substantiate opinions without evidence. I only had things that I kind of vaguely identified with, but as time went on and I started forming more and more of my own stances and doing more and more of my own research, the identity aspect became second to none in terms of importance. It was basically useless at that point. It wasn't a matter of trying to be part of any specific group, it was a matter of being myself. And so I didn't become, loyal to any sort of belief system or idea in terms of ideology. I wasn't running around saying this is my ideology anymore, because ideology was something that I moved past. Like, it was at that point, it wasn't about putting myself in a specific group. It was more about just having relative beliefs about stuff. And many of those beliefs align with certain groups, yes, some more than others, but a lot of those beliefs don't align with any group, at least not mainstream, definitely. And so it's a matter of just figuring out what your own stances are. And then once you do that and you're constantly taking in more and more information from every single side, that eventually the conclusions that you make from seeing that information just serves to reaffirm the stance that you've already had, that you've become sure of it. And now by this point, you know, in what has been almost a year, I've basically, I flip flopped a few times on a few certain things, but on nothing that's like super important. On like on the stuff that really matters, I've stayed pretty much the same. And the reason why is because once you figure it out, you're sure of it. You just continue repeating the same stuff again and again and again. And this is sort of a conclusion that a lot of people make, when they get a lot older, because they don't have the time that I do. They don't have the time to just constantly sit in their room and research the way that I have been doing for the last like 3 years. And I mean, even before I was constantly researching about this stuff, back, when I was just like a normal kid, I had politics on the news all the time, which is a particularly bad source, but it was something I was always interested in. I listened to NPR and stuff. I looked at a lot of articles that I was exposed to, and so I kept up with it to some extent. But in the last 3 years, especially, I have just been like obsessed. Like every single day, having an RSS feed of every political website, looking at all of these different historical books, looking at all of this data constantly, keeping up with all of these political YouTubers from, all different sides of the aisle, and really trying to get an understanding of what the facts are. Joining lots of Discord servers to have discussions and debates with people to get myself out of my comfort zone. Speaking with friends about issues that we disagree on. And I used to get really, really mad when we would disagree on stuff because a lot of where that anger would come from was a lack of sureness on my part. That, more often than not, when someone gets angry in an argument, it's because they envy your confidence. They want to be as sure about who you are and what you believe as you are. And I can admire someone who may disagree with me but stands for something. It may be something that I find to be totally wrong, but if they stand for something and they believe it and they've put in so much time and effort and research into believing that thing, I can respect them for that confidence. But when you don't have that confidence yourself, you get angry and you want it. You want the same confidence that your opponent has, you just don't have it. And so a lot of the time when I would get angry, it was because I envied those people. It's because I wanted to do things the way that they did. And now I've gotten to the point where I do it better than them because I looked at what they were doing and I said, I want to be like that. I envy these people for their willingness to be consistent, for having something that they believe in. And then I just decided, well, I believe in this. I'm going to, continue doing more and more research. Okay, maybe I don't believe that exactly anymore, but each thing that I've found has only reaffirmed this new thing that I've figured out. Like it's a matter of practice. It's a matter of exposing yourself to as much of the information as possible and then practicing as much as possible to reinforce that. And once you get to that place where you are consistent and where you are confident in what you believe, then no matter how many discussions you have with people, as long as you're doing it right, you're not going to feel a thing. I get into heated debates constantly with people now, and it doesn't even faze me because I know I am right, and I am the only person who I need to speak to. The goal is not always to win. The goal is simply to engage, to simply flex nuts and practice at the act of rhetoric, at the act of being able to substantiate a point. That is fun. It's fun to do that. You don't get angry in that situation because you're just doing it, And I think that's cool. I think that's really, really cool to do stuff like that. Like, no matter how many bad, terrible takes that I see from people, it's not gonna faze me because I believe what I believe. I believe I'm right. And I'm the only person who I need to speak to about that. If you allow other people to go against your own consistency, your own sense of self, your own worldview, you allow them to control what you believe, then you're just going to be an automaton for other people, Like, in some way, everyone is a product of their conditions. They're a product of the people around them, right? I'm not gonna deny that, but I don't think you should throw the baby out with the bathwater and just determine your entire belief system based on what people tell you to do. That's quitter talk. That's slave talk, You have to decide what you believe in and then internalize that. You have to internalize that and be consistent about it. And then, like, if you're doing it right, when people come at you and they say, "Yeah, bro, well, I believe the exact opposite thing," it's like, okay, do you want to have a discussion about that? Let's do it. And then you do, and you may agree or disagree, but regardless of what happens, you are consistent. The people, oftentimes, what happens is that the people who get angry really want that consistency. They really want that confidence that you have. They wish they could have the confidence you have. Um, and I think that's a really special feeling because I was in a position where I envied the confidence of others who were able to be consistent, able to substantiate their points consistently. And I didn't really have that. And so I would get angry because I would sort of project my own insecurities and my own inability to argue onto others. And I can recognize now that I still have flaws in my argumentation. I still have a ways to go, but I have a belief. I have something that I stand for, something I fight for. And that's really the important thing. That's the important base. That's the entire foundation of where that confidence is going to come from. And I think, I think once you just stop giving a fuck, once you just stop giving a fuck about how wrong everyone else is, and you just focus on that, developing consistency, developing correctness, then, you're going to filter everything else out because it doesn't matter how wrong everyone else is. It doesn't matter because if you let that infuriate you and make you angry, you're missing the forest for the trees. The point the point is to build confidence through consistency. And once that confidence is there, you just don't have any fucks left. Like you always hear these like ultra Chad people talking about, you shouldn't care about what other people think and just do your own thing. You shouldn't let others control you and stuff. And part of where that comes in is in debates. It's in arguments. It's in seeing people who disagree with you. When you get triggered, when you get triggered by seeing someone with a differing opinion, that is a choice. That is a choice that you're actively making because you can choose not to. You can just train yourself to not be bothered by that stuff, to see it and have an entirely stoic reaction and go, well, I'm right, so who cares? Like it it's a lot better, I think. It's a lot more healthy to be able to entertain an idea without accepting it. I mean, it goes back to that quote is that like, it was the mark of an educated mind to entertain an idea without accepting it. If you get just violently upset whenever you see something that you disagree with, well, first of all, you're not going to be able to have discussions, but also or at least coherent, proper discussions. But also, you're going to end up in a situation where the entire world around you just makes you mad, where the entire world is annoying. It's like I said in my video, Stop Fighting the Ocean. If you care so much about how other people view you, if you care so much about what other people think, and what other people are doing, and what other people are up to, then that's just going to eat away at you because the ocean keeps flowing. You can't fight against a current that's just going to exist and is going to keep existing. What you can fight against is your reaction to it. You can either join the current and continue, waving around in the sands of time or whatever, or you can be lost to the sands of time and drowned by trying to fight against it. And so, like, when I talk about that, what I really mean is that the current is going to go one way regardless. People are going to believe one thing. People are going to probably hate you for a lot of reasons, or they're probably, going to say things that could theoretically make you upset if you disagree with them hard enough. But that's okay, because that's the way that they are. You may be able to educate them. You may be able to get them on your side, but you shouldn't bet on it. The likelihood of that happening is pretty low. And so the only thing you can really do is hope, for the person to get better eventually, and then simply put it aside. To simply say, well, disagreement is the disagreement, and that's life. You can't fight against the ocean. You have to embrace the current for what it is, because the current's going to exist regardless of you. You know, they're going to believe what they're going to believe, regardless of how you feel. The only thing you're doing is making yourself more upset by getting mad and telling this person to fuck off and all this other stuff. It just doesn't work that way. You know, like I've had like a lot of arguments with like family members, for instance, over philosophical, political, social, anything, a lot of things. And I think, you know, the reaction that a lot of people would have would go, well, I couldn't do that because it would make me really upset, or I couldn't do that because the social hierarchy is in place and I would be afraid to step on too many toes by disagreeing. But it's important. It's important to be able to not let that bother you, because the disagreement's going to exist. You can choose to not talk about it if you want to, but the disagreement's going to exist. It's always going to be something that hangs over your head, that lingers in the background, something you keep thinking about, something that little things will make you notice. And if those little things, those triggers, make you notice that I'm mad about this disagreement, I'm mad about existence as it stands, then you have to change that, or it's going to consume you. It's going to eat away at you. And, you know, the reason I can sit here and just talk with these people who I adamantly disagree with all the time and not even care, feel absolutely nothing in doing so, is because I don't care. And I've trained myself not to care. There's absolutely no fucks left. That is confidence. That is consistency.